All right, so we've got a catalyst right now that is driving a number of stocks in the market higher. We've got our top 5 leading percentage gainers. They're all up over 100%. I'm sitting right now at $30,799.05, and our leading percentage gainer went up over 700%. Wow, we've got to buckle up. We've got some serious momentum. Now, I'll be the first to remind you, in case you didn't already know, my results are not typical. I've been doing this for a long time, and that actually puts me in the perfect position to share with you what I see happening with this new theme, because this isn't the first time I've been through this. So right now, the catalyst that is driving a lot of this volatility is the mpox outbreak that's going on in Africa. This happened, I've seen this happen before with the Ebola outbreaks, and it certainly happened with COVID. It's a little reminiscent of that. So I want to share with you the way I'm going to be trading these types of headlines in the coming days and weeks. I'm going to, of course, break down for you the trades that I took today, and I'm going to walk you through essentially what my game plan is going to be for tomorrow morning, because it's very possible that we'll see this momentum continue into tomorrow. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the screen share here. I've got slide deck here. We've got the whiteboard. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, and you can see my P&L right there. These are all the stocks I traded today. We've got, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8 stocks, green on 5 out of the 8. So I've got 3 that I'm red on. Serious volatility today. In fact, when I opened up my phone and checked my scanners, these are the scans I use, and so I can see them on my phone pre-market. I was really shocked to see the number of big percentage gainers that we had at 6:45 this morning. I was like, whoa, okay. First of all, I've already missed a lot of momentum, and I bet some of you guys felt the same way. You sit down, you see there's already all these stocks up 100%. What am I going to do? So I'm going to walk you through how I break the ice if I've already missed that first leg of the move, because that's a really important skill to have. So things began pretty early this morning sitting down with these big percentage gainers. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. We'll make it full screen. So we've got the mpox virus as a catalyst. And the topic of today's class, we're going to talk about virus catalysts in general, how to analyze the headlines, the biotech sector strength, how that carries over to sympathy momentum, and my game plan for tomorrow and also the days and probably weeks ahead. So let's start just by talking about the mpox catalyst. We've got this report from the World Health Organization. They declared mpox outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. They said they announced the highest level of alert for mpox. So, all of a sudden, people are starting to freak out a little bit. They're like, what's going on? And the market isn't really responding negatively. Similar to Ebola, all of a sudden we're seeing opportunity. And this was also true at the beginning of COVID. Those of you that were trading back in 2020, you'll probably recall, even at the end of 2019, we started seeing small biotech companies come out with a headline that they had a new, a patent pending whatever for testing COVID. And, new contract for COVID testing in the airport. And new contract for, 15-minute COVID rapid testing, like all this kind of stuff. And those types of headlines were sending some of those biotech stocks up 100% or more within minutes. Traders were jumping on them. And short sellers, were getting burned because they were jumping on these stocks to the short side that were popping up thinking, I don't know, is this company really going to go anywhere? But next thing you know, it's up 150, 200, 300, 400%. As momentum traders are just jumping on. So this is a market that can get irrational. So you've got to be able to prepare yourself for that. Now, when it came to COVID, these headlines were lasting for over a year. I mean, every couple of days we were seeing a stock with a COVID-related headline. But once, Pfizer and Moderna made progress with the vaccines, that really kind of tampered down a lot of the sort of momentum plays that were coming from COVID. But with the Ebola virus, and I remember this, it's like 10 years ago, but it's kept kind of, coming up from time to time, they'll have another outbreak. There are some stocks that specifically do, I don't know exactly what it is, but they're somehow tied in with Ebola research or something like that. And then there's these companies that make the biohazmat suits that are, those big yellow suits that everyone's wearing. So, those stocks were going crazy. I can pull up one of them. One was called Lakeland Industries, Lake. see if it's still traded. Lakeland Industries. So this is a company that makes these biohazard suits. And so in 2021, during the pandemic, of course, the stock went crazy. But we could probably, well, maybe, I can't remember. I feel like this was the one I'm thinking of, but it only goes back to 2018. So maybe there was another one. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. But the moral of the story right now is that there's no question about the fact that this market is pretty frothy. We're seeing some big moves. So the catalyst that kind of got it started for a lot of these biotech stocks was mpox. Now, interestingly, ALZN, which is one of the stocks I did the best on today, and I guess my P&L, I made a little bit more after that last one. ALZN is a biotech stock, but they're not doing anything with mpox. Now, VRAX, that's different. VRAX is right off the mpox catalyst. GOVX, right off the mpox catalyst. NCNA, just a biotech company. Nothing really to do with mpox. And so this kind of gets in this challenge of analyzing headlines. Oh, and there was another one here that I didn't pull up, but I'll just grab on my my charts. APDN. So APDN, this one also had the mpox catalyst here. So applied DNA to submit application to New York State Department of Health to expand intended use of mpox virus. So, you know, that sent this stock in the pre-market session up a lot. So when I first sit down this morning, I see that APDN is up, 100%, 6:30 a.m. It hits a high of like 240. So I'm like, oh my gosh. I see VRAX has made a huge move. And my initial feeling was, how do I chase the move? Because usually I'm going to do the best when I'm sitting here when the news comes out, and I could be jumping on at the very beginning of the move. And that makes sense. You're going to do better if you're buying this first pullback for your first entry versus trading it up here, right? But if you already have something that's up this much, this was my concern. Our leading percentage gainers up a solid 300, 200, whatever percent. How is any other stock today going to become the most obvious gainer? I mean, the bar is set pretty high. On a day when there's nothing moving, maybe a stock goes up 50% and is the leading gainer. But on a day like today, when you've got big movers, it's hard to knock that stock off its top spot as the #1 leading percentage gainer. And one of the reasons this is important, if you haven't already checked out any of my episodes on stock selection, you should definitely check those out because I break down for you the 5 pillars of stock selection, the 5 criteria that I look at every single morning to decide whether or not I should trade something. And one of the things that you have to realize is that the stocks that are the #1, #2, #3 leading percentage gainers, those are like the top 3 search results on Google. It's what everyone looks at. No one really goes that far down the list. They're looking at the top couple of stocks that are up. And a lot of the brokers out there, they make money the more you trade. They want to encourage you to trade. And so they're going to highlight for you these stocks that are moving because they want you to trade them because that's how they're going to make their money. So these stocks get a lot of exposure and a lot of attention. So when I first sit down and I pull up VRAX, I'm thinking, all right, well, I can't deny the fact that it is the leading percentage gainer. It's up a lot. It's moving. So how do I break the ice? Okay, so I pull it up right here, and this was the first one that I traded. So we'll back this up here all the way to the beginning of the day, and you'll see that I'm up $11,343. But my very first trade on it, just about breaking the ice. The first goal is making what? $1,000. So that's my first goal each day. So today started the same as any other day with a goal of making $1,000. Now I'm up 30 grand, but it still started with this goal. Once I'm up more than $1,000, now I've got sort of like, I call it my cushion, and it's a little bit of house money because now I've made money here and I can use this to take more risk. And the worst thing that happens is I go back to 0 on the day, no harm, no foul, right? I want to do everything possible to avoid going into the negative, right? I don't want to go down $5,000 on the day or something like that. So that means on my first few trades, I've got to be really careful. So APDN, VRAX is on my scans. I'm watching it squeeze up here and I'm thinking, all right, so where can I get in? We come up to 6:45, we come up to 7 a.m. It hits a high right here of about 463 at 650. And it seemed like these stocks were kind of squeezing before 7 a.m. Now, those of you guys who are familiar with what happens at 7 a.m., at 7 a.m., that's when brokers like Ameritrade, E-Trade, or Thinkorswim, E-Trade, they come online. So a lot of those traders can't even trade pre-market. Pre-market is until 9:30 a.m., but a lot of them can't trade before 7 a.m. I can with my broker, but nonetheless, I sat down right at about 7. So as it starts to squeeze up right here, I actually took my first trade with an entry at $4.95. That was right here. So we get this squeeze up. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green candles in a row, a little pullback, and I got in right there. And this squeezes up to 515, and it hit a high of 520. So that was my first trade, in at 496, and then got my best exit. Let's see. So I had a couple trades in there, adding and then selling and then adding back. But in total, trading in that area, I got the best exit. It looks like 519. And then it goes sideways right here and it squeezes up, and I added back over 550 for the break of the $0.5 whole dollar. So these are trades right around psychological levels of support and resistance. One of the things that you may already know, but you may not, is that a lot of stocks trade with a great deal of respect to $0.5 and whole dollars. So this stock starts at like 3, goes up to 350, then goes up to 4, then goes up to 450, then goes up to 5, and then 550. And so what ends up happening is there's a lot of sell orders right around the whole dollar, and a lot around the $0.5, and a lot around the whole dollar, $0.5, and whole dollar. And so what this means is that as the price is moving higher, we get this initial kind of squeeze up here where it squeezes to 3, it pulls back for a second, resistance as it hits those sellers, and then it pushes through to 350. Then resistance as it hits those sellers, and it pushes through to 4. Resistance, then pushing through, resistance, then pushing through. So what I like to do is I like to buy these little pullbacks right here, right around these $0.5 and whole dollars. So my first trade was 495 for the break of 5. My second trade then, or one of the next trades, was right around 550 for the squeeze up to 565, 570. And that's exactly what happened. This thing goes up to $6. Now, in those first few trades, I broke the ice and I got myself into the green, but only by a couple $1,000. I made $1,000 in my first few trades, and then I made another 1,000, 1,500, got myself up 2,500, then 3,500. So next thing you know, I'm up closer to 4,500. I'm like, all right, making some money here. And then it tops out up around 660 and starts to dip down. So I'm like, all right, VRAX is pulling back, and it doesn't seem like it's going to work right now. And I will say on this one, the MACD was kind of tricky, because you see positive, then negative, then positive, then negative, then positive, then negative. It kept flipping from positive to negative. So this also had a couple of jackknife candles here and here. And then it had another one right here. And it had another one as we came into the open right around here. So this was a little tricky. But then all of a sudden it rips and it halts up right here. And when it opened, I bought the dip and sold into this rip up to $8, and that is what put me up over $11,000 on VRAX. That break of VWAP right there was really impressive. I have some other episodes on the break of VWAP setup if you haven't checked them out, but that was really nice. And we ended up peaking at $9 a share. Now, as of right now, let's take the temperature. It's back at 5. So it's still holding up. Let's see, it's currently up, VRAX, 138%. So it is in our top leading percentage gainers. However, it has pulled back a little bit off of its peak. So I'm trading VRAX, 715, 730, 740. And then all of a sudden we have a new stock that hits the scanner. So I built my cushion just trading VRAX basically. And then let me see, then all of a sudden at 8 a.m., ALZN hits the scans. And ALZN hits the scans, and immediately I see ALZN Neuro, and I'm like, okay, Biotech partners with Mass General Hospital for phase 2 clinical trial of AL001. So I'm like, okay, it's a biotech stock. So it's in the sector that right now is hot. But it, of course, is obviously not an mpox related catalyst. So let's pull our slides back up here. Where did I put my slides? Okay, so So now we're going to talk about analyzing these headlines. So now we're getting a headline. APDN, that headline obviously has mpox right in the headline. Okay. GOVX, this one, mpox, in the headline, but more as a kind of related. mpox stocks are on the move, and this stock was just tagged in that headline, right? Most active stocks this morning. VRAX, this one didn't have anything that was a direct tie in the headlines to mpox, but we knew that that was the catalyst. So, these headlines are sort of from directly to indirectly to just like, sort of related to the to the mpox outbreak. And then you get a stock like ALZN. So when we have this theme of big momentum in this sector, the whole sector ends up seeing sort of a benefit from it. So now you've got all of these biotech stocks, large cap biotech stocks as well, that are just squeezing. And so now it's a rising tide that lifts all ships, right? This is some serious momentum. So when we look at these biotech, not biotech, and then I'd have to check on that one. So the top four here are all biotech. And this one, initially, I was cautious on it. You could see I traded it and made $1,500, but I was like, it's not a biotech. Should it really be going up today? It did go up, and I made a little on it, but this is kind of the thing with sympathy momentum. So I'll share with you my game plan in a second, but ALZN, I kind of attributed to being sympathy momentum. Now, if you look at this chart, we sort of take the temperature of it. It started at $2. It went to a high of like 15 and then came back down to 5. So all things considered, it's still up over 100% on the day. It ran right into its 200 moving average and unfortunately is an unattractive candle on the daily chart. 80 million shares of volume, but it's a red topping tail, right? It's a shooting star candle. So this is not an attractive candle on the daily chart, just resistance plus that big rejection. And that's unfortunate, but it's also not super shocking. So I think what this had going for it this morning was basically out of nowhere, the stock starts squeezing up. And let's just look at the daily volume. Yesterday, it traded 46,000 shares of volume, or Friday. Then the day before, Thursday, it had 180,000. So like super light volume. It's a somewhat recent reverse split stock that is literally trading one day away from its all-time lows. This hit all-time lows on Friday. That's the reality. And now here we are Monday morning, they come out with a headline, and what's the float? 633,000 shares. Sometimes I double check that with our market data vendor just to see, is that accurate? Because sometimes these are very low and you've got to just double check it. So you double check it, you see, all right, well, it's 840,000 shares. That's still pretty ridiculously low. So it's a very low float stock. This thing is squeezing up. I was checking risk factors earlier on this one. So, I was trying to understand on this basically what their financial situation is. Let's see, where are they? They have a really long filing. They've got so much stuff in here. Okay, so R&D costs 2024, loss from operations 2023 was 14 million. Loss from operations right now is 9.9 million. You've got to realize this is very common with a lot of these biotech companies. They are basically, shareholders are financing their R&D in the hopes that they come out, develop something really successful, and the whole company gets bought out, or they sell it and license it for, hundreds of millions or maybe billions of dollars. That's kind of like the best case scenario for these companies. But the fact is, a lot of these companies, they don't have a solid balance sheet. They've got a lot of debt. They don't have a lot of cash. So I'm looking for cash. Where's Control F? Cash. Oh, we've got too much. Assets. There we go. All right. So $376,000 of cash, right? So it's like, yikes, that's not a lot of money. I've got more money in my trading account than that. So that's a little bit, you see that, and then you're like, all right, they've got news that's just come out. is this a company that is at risk of doing an offering? That's what that's what I start to worry about. So let's see, going concern, negative cash flow from operations, raise some substantial doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern, right? So, I mean, this is the reality with a lot of these small cap biotech stocks. I think that I did see something in here. We need to obtain additional funding to complete development and commercialization. So, they're telling us pretty clearly that they're going to need to raise money. We could go look in more detail at some of these filings. They've got their regaining compliance prospectus. So they've got the ability to sell 125 million shares on the open market. And, as you kind of look through this stuff, it starts to become clear that there's a possibility that we could see an offering. Now, that may not happen, right? I was worried about that with CING. Hasn't happened yet with CING. Price is still holding up. And in fact, for what it's worth, I would keep this on the watch list as a possibility. We'll come back and talk about this one again in a second. But nonetheless, so ALZN basically out of nowhere starts squeezing up. It's initially punches here up from about $2 up to $3.50. So as it squeezes up there, that was at 804. It hits a high of 372, and then it drops back down. So I actually took my first trades on it. It was at 327 when I took my first trades, and that was as it was breaking over $3 right here. So I got in a little high. I chased it. It squeezed up to 347, 360, hit a high right here of 376, and I ended up taking profit at 365, 351, and then it dips back down. It dips way down, and I ended up buying the dip at 286. It bounces back up to 3, and this was ridiculous. It then squeezes from 3 to 350 to 4 to 450 to 5, and I sold my 2,500 shares that I bought at 286. I sold those at 298 and 305. Then I got back in at 349 and sold at 360 and 383. And then I added back at 397 for the break of 4 and sold as we squeezed over 4 up to 462. Then I added back at 419, took profit at 420, added, which was basically break even, added back at 450, sold at 475, sold at 510. Now I'm adding at 540 for the break of 550. We squeeze up to 550. We go up to 575. We go up to 6. Holy smokes. Unbelievable. Where did that come from? This thing just out of nowhere has super heavy volume and is just buying volume. So I'm trading this as it's squeezing up. Then it pulls back right here, hits a low of about 550. Then it curls back up. Now this is our 1 minute chart, right? So we've got our 1 minute chart. If we switch to the 5 minute chart on this, you'll see on the 5 minute, we get this first 3 candles up, the pullback at 550, it pushes higher, and then we get kind of this longer pullback right here. We end up dipping down to volume weighted average price. We curl up to 7, up to 8. We dip down, and at the open, this was a really interesting pattern. Right there was a wick reclaim. So what happened there on that was essentially this did a really nasty jackknife where it popped up to 850 and then slammed back down. And I actually traded it right in this area, and I had a winner and then I had a loser, and I was a little annoyed. And as I took the loss on it, I switched to a different stock that was on the scanners. And it's lucky that I did, because while I was looking at that other stock, so I got in right here for the break of 8. I took 2 trades right here. So at this point, by the way, I was up about, let's see, I'm trying to remember. I was up 21,000 on the day, right there, right about 21,000. And then I got in for the break of 8. I think it was right here, stopped out for $1,500 loss. So now I'm up 19.5. I got back in, stopped out a second time for another loss. Now I'm up 17. And I'm like, okay, I've just given back a little bit. I'm getting a little annoyed. I go look at something else, and this thing sells off. I saw it selling off, so I was like, whatever. I look at something else. I look back, and someone's like, Ross, and I see it just hit 840 and is back at 7. I was like, whoa, that was unreal. and then watch this slow rally back up. It rallies back up here. Next thing you know, boom, we're halted up. And I got back in right here. As it started to pull away over 850, I was like, here we go. And next thing you know, it's halted up. It opens, we get a dip and a rip, and it goes up to 10. And from there, we were off to the races. And I actually peaked at about 30, right around 35,000 today. So I gave back some profit off the top. I peaked with ALZN, and then I gave back a little profit, just over trading it. I mean, I just, up in this area, I just over traded it. It's as simple as that. I kept thinking it was going to go higher, and I got caught in a couple nasty false breakouts. So I got chopped up a little bit on ALZN, and then I took this nasty loss on GOVX. So that was, I gave back a little on that, and then I had this loss on GOVX. So with GOVX, what we had going on this one was, it was sort of sympathy, because we had just had this move on VRAX where it kind of looked like it was all over, and then, right, it was sort of all over, and then look at that squeeze. And to be honest, ALZN was sort of similar. It sort of looked like maybe it was going to be choppy, and then it puts in this big squeeze. And APDN had kind of done something similar, right? So I pull up GOVX, and I'm thinking, all right, if this thing right here squeezes, we could get a halt up and a move from right here, 1080 up to 12. So now I'm already up 30 plus on the day. So I bought 10,000 shares. I'm in at $10.75, and it immediately drops. Instantly, I'm down 50 cents, $5,000 gone. So I was like, whoa, okay, time to slow down a little bit. Now this will happen. In a hot market, you get aggressive. And I don't feel bad about where I'm at today or that loss, because if I didn't step up to the plate, I wouldn't be up as much as I am right now. So it's kind of like, so here's an interesting analogy. See, I don't know if this is going to work, but so when I went to Colorado last year, I flew out to Colorado, and I flew to Denver, and then I got into my camper, my Sprinter van, which I bought, and I had these two brothers in Colorado upfitting it for me with the bunk beds in the back for me and my boys. So me and my son get out there, and we drive up to Estes National Park or State Park, whatever it is. It's like 7,000 feet of elevation. And I got this incredible headache, like just absolutely incredible headache. And what I learned is that if you want to go to 7,500 feet, especially if you're from East Coast like I am, you have to go higher and then come back down. So then you sort of, I don't know, go higher and then come back to 7,500, and then 7,500 is good. And so with trading, if I want to get to 30, I might have to push to 35 and then have a setback, because I have to be able to really lean in. So it's like pushing and pushing and pushing. And then there'll just be a point where it's like, uh-oh, starting to set back here, time to stop right there and not pull back any further. Well, why didn't I stop here? Because I didn't know if at this point I had a dip, but you've got to keep pushing. And then that, if I had stopped there, I wouldn't have had all of this. So I've got to keep pushing, essentially until I have kind of 2 steps back. And then that's the point right here to walk away. This is the power of knowing when to quit. And so I'll grab my book here as a reminder, Knowing When to Quit by Annie Duke, and Thinking in Bets, 2 books that she wrote that I think are great. You can listen to them on audio tape if you want. But anyway, so I wouldn't have been up 30 today if I hadn't taken risk. So I can't, you can't pat yourself on the back for every time you take risk and it works, and then, berate yourself for taking risk and it goes the wrong way. Look, right? This is just the way it is. Losses are going to happen. So in hindsight, I don't know. I mean, I could have seen this working. I honestly could have. And VRAX worked so well. So I don't know. It didn't work for whatever reason, but it's fine. It is what it is. So that was my biggest loss of the day. But I did have probably like 5 small losses on ALZN in the range of like $1,500 to $2,000. Kind of annoying, a little disappointing, just getting chopped up. And I did push it today, and I traded all the way till after hours, in fact, which is why the recap is a little late today. I felt like this is a day where the market's calling for it. I need to dig deep because look, I'll have days where no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to make more than 2 or 3 grand. And then there's going to be days like today where if I just step up and lean in a little bit, it could be an extra $10,000 or $15,000. So on those types of days, I've got to dig deep and really try to get as much as I can out of the opportunity. So if we look at my calendar here for the month of month of August, you'll see Friday, $2,500. Tuesday, last week, $2,700. But last Monday, $24,000. Came out of the gate swinging, capitalized on it, traded 69 trades, was aggressive. The next day, only 6 trades. There was nothing moving. The day after that, 30 trades. We had some action. Day after that, 28 trades. We had some action. Friday, it was dead. Today, I started with a $1,000 goal, not knowing if it was going to be a big green day or a slow day. But because we had some stocks were already up, I felt like it was worth breaking the ice on those. So I broke the ice at the $0.50 whole dollar, got myself up 1,000. Next thing you know, it's 2,500, 3,500, up to 5 grand. And then boom, we have this big squeeze on ALZN. And just next thing you know, I'm up 15, 18, 21,000 on the day. And so and to be honest, I feel like I could have made a lot more on this in this area right here. The problem was we had a jackknife, and that jackknife, which gave us the wick reclaim pattern, was sort of the first, or maybe this had a couple caution flags, but this was the first big one. And it was like high volume red candle. A lot of times that's high a day and it doesn't go back. So getting back in here is like, look, last time it was up here, what did it do? Big jackknife. So you get nervous. So I trade it with small size and then a dip and a rip. But even then I'm like, man, I got to keep this really tight. And then up in this area, you're starting to get to a price range where you're seeing 25, 30 cent spreads. You jump in with 5,000, 10,000 shares and instantly you could be down 3 grand in the spread. And suddenly, it starts dropping. You could be down $1 a share. You're down 10 grand. So it got to a point where, yes, it was moving like faster, but I had to reduce my share size. And even then, I still gave back a little bit off the top. So I'm not finishing at my high of day today. Oh, and this was another nasty jackknife right here. And I saw this one happen and I was like, yep. I was sort of watching it in the afternoon thinking, well, if this thing can curl up, maybe. But I was like, I'm not jumping in it until it can really pull away because I was worried about that jackknife. So what I needed to see on this was really that it could kind of get back above this like $14 level, and it wasn't able to. So ALZN really was, I would say, sympathy momentum to this kind of biotech theme that we've got right now. Not to say that it didn't have its own headline, because it did, but it wasn't related to mpox. But the mpox catalyst is what's kind of given biotech some extra juice. And I'll say that, but at the same time, biotechs historically are a strong sector, and even in recent weeks have been pretty good. So we've got the overall sector strength. And now I want to talk about my game plan here, but I also want to break down these other stocks I traded. So what have we gone over here? We've talked about ALZN. We've talked about VRAX. We talked about GOVX. So we've got some in the middle. So APDN, I'm up $1,000 on. This one, obviously, mpox catalyst, squeezing up. Traded it this morning during regular trading hours as it broke through pre-market highs right here. So I got in for the break of 250. There was $0.50 entry. There was a 30,000 share seller. When that seller broke, I punched the order, got in, I think it was 15,000 shares, squeezes up to 260, goes up to 270, scaled out pretty quickly as it went up because there were a lot of sellers. Maybe it was only 10,000 shares. I can't remember. But anyways, locked up a little bit of profit on that one, trading that move higher. Then we had SOND. And SOND was funny because this one, the headline was, this is like a hospitality company or something, or it's related to hospitality. The headline today was some partnership with Marriott. So, I'm like, is this even going to go at all? I honestly didn't think it would, but it did. And this was the ascending resistance line they kind of stopped it from giving us an after hours squeeze higher. But pre-market, it was sort of choppy. See, it pops up, it dips down, it goes up to 4, and then it dumps. Then it goes back up to 380, then it dumps again. Then it goes back up to 4, and then it drops again. Then it comes back up here. So like this thing was just not easy to trade. In fact, I can't even remember where I traded it. Let me look at my my orders for this one. So I got a trade on it at the open at $3.96. So that would have been right here for the breakthrough, that pre-market high, and it squeezed up to 460. So that was my trade. And I went with smaller size because it had just given this sort of nasty rejection. And it gave another rejection just a moment later. So this one, it was a little outside the theme, but then later at noontime, it rips up and, pushes higher. So I was like, gosh darn it, this thing is strong. But anyways, so that was SOND. And then NCNA, currently up 122%. This stock goes from 5 to 6 to 7, halts down, then goes up to 8 to 9 to 10, almost to $11 a share out of nowhere. I didn't even see news on it. I was trying to figure out what is the catalyst on this stock, right? Yes, it has high volume today relative to what's normal, high relative volume. It broke through the 200 EMA. But I just couldn't figure out what the catalyst was. And then I saw some people saying that there was a $150 price target on it. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Nonetheless, it squeezes up here to 550. This ends up being a cup and handle formation. It breaks 550 and goes up to 6 and halts up. Then it opens and we get a dip and a rip. I traded the dip and the rip into a halt. It opens higher. It dips down, halts down. And then on resumption, it curls back up here, and I'm trading it again for this move up higher. And this ended up giving me $3,854 of profit towards the end of the day. Then we come into after hours, and my last trade was on BCDA. This stock starts to pop up after hours. I got in at 4. It goes up to 460, and then immediately back to 370. Ended up losing $300 on it, so whatever. Red on that. Red on Saidu, which was another stock that popped up earlier, kind of halted and then opened way high. And then I tried to take a trade on the break of 5. But again, this one, not in the biotech catalyst space. TTNP on the scans right now, Titan Pharmaceuticals from 6 to 10. That's a nice move. Granted, it's on only 150,000 shares of volume, so it's very thinly traded. But right now, how much is it up? 102%. So this is going to be possibly a gapper that we'll watch into tomorrow. What's the headline? Well, actually, let's see. Let me just read this headline here. Entered into a material definitive agreement. Oh. BSKE will acquire. It's an acquisition. Okay, so the problem with that is usually, so has announced entering a merger and contribution and share exchange agreement. It was approved by the board. If approved by shareholders, TT will merge. Okay, so TTN merger sub will merge into Titan, and the separate existence of merger sub will cease. Okay, Titan will be the surviving corporation of the merger. Okay, it's a little bit of a complicated catalyst though, so those are tricky. I don't love that headline. Anyways, we'll see what it does tomorrow. So now let's talk about the game plan moving forward. Okay, so my thought right now is, as always, of course, I'm hunting for volatility, right? So I'm happy to trade whatever is moving, but I have a good feeling that we're going to see more catalysts that are tied into mpox and or that are just in the biotech space because of the level of momentum that we've seen. Obviously, we still have CING. I mentioned this one the other day on Friday and in my watch list for Sunday because I thought, it's on the one hand, it's holding up relatively well. So you had the European patent for ADHD. It's an inside candle today. It hasn't had the offering yet. Today's volume was super low, high volume, super low. People are not pounding it to the short side. So this could give us a first candle to make a new high. Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe Wednesday or Thursday. I don't know. We'll see. But I would keep it on watch. So CING is on watch. ALNZ, probably ALZN, probably not going to be on watch. I mean, you could get a little dead cat bounce on it, but that's never as clean as the front side of the move. NCNA, I don't know if that's going to be on watch. TTNP pushing higher here. You could see how these ones that are thinly traded like this. Oh, and it's also easy to borrow, which is interesting. But look at this. Look at how fast it's going. 1030, 1043, 981. It just went to 980 from 1020 to 981 on basically 100 shares of volume. Like that's hard to manage risk on. So, but what was also very interesting was that ALZN was easy to borrow all day long today. So it was easy to borrow, and I think some shorts got really smoked on that move because it was up 700%. So I think CING is worth keeping an eye on, but my plan is to hunt for volatility. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to sit down, 6:30, look at my scans on my phone, come over here to the office. I'll be sitting here by 7 a.m. and I'll look for what is the most obvious stock at 7. It'll most likely be the top leading percentage gainer. And I may not trade it. It's possible that by 7 a.m., which sometimes happens, is you get this big pop at 4 a.m. and then by 7, it's already coming back down. In fact, that's exactly what happened, that's what I was going to mention, on CING. CING actually hit a pre-market high of $24 a share this morning. So it was a 4 a.m. squeeze, makes this big pop, but then, as you can see, by 7 a.m., it was already selling off. So that's kind of interesting, all the way up to like $26 a share. So I'm going to be watching the leading gainers, and I'm going to be looking for which one looks the cleanest for trades coming into, approximately 7 a.m. And then I'll keep trading all the way up until the open. And at the open, we'll watch to see if stocks drop from people that have good till kill orders out, good till cancel orders. If those execute, stock could drop at the open, and then we look for a red to green move and a squeeze back up. So as I'm checking for volatility and hunting for volatility, I'll be checking the catalyst, the sector, and the headlines to try to figure out what is driving the stock higher. Is it a pharmaceutical company? Because that's where we've been seeing big momentum. Is it related to mpox? Even if not, as long as it's a biotech stock, it's certainly worth watching. How does it meet my 5 criteria for stock selection? Now, if you don't already know my 5 criteria for stock selection, I'll put a link in the description where you can do the 2-week trial at Warrior Trading. It's a 2-week trial for $19. And during that time, you'll have access to a selection of classes from my Warrior Pro curriculum. And those classes will include a full description of the 5 criteria for stock selection. In those early chapters that you'll have access to, I'm going to introduce to you the core concepts that I use in my trading as part of my strategy. And then we're going to fill in the blanks around all of those concepts to help you build a solid foundation as you're getting started learning how to trade, especially if you're trying to trade momentum like what I'm doing. Now, I'll say that my goal, as always, each day is to buy on the first entry signal that I see, which I describe in the courses, and then to sell at the first profit target just to build my cushion. My first profit target's $1,000. So I've got to get first that cushion. And then once I've got my $1,000 cushion, then I can start to get more aggressive. So then I'm going to start selling half at the first profit target and then selling the rest at the first exit indicator. And if I don't see an exit indicator and we get a squeeze from 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10, then I'm going to be a very happy camper. So I'm going to put the link here for the 2-week trial. You guys can check that out, and it'll be linked down in the description as well. As we sit right now, I can pull up our after hours scanner. Usually I'm not doing the watch or my recap this late, but TTNP is our leading after hours mover. And then the second leader is ASNS. TTNP, of course, a pharmaceutical company, but it's got this merger headline, 200 moving average on it, around 7. Gaps and windows on the chart, somewhat recent reverse split. float is pretty low. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on. And then ASNS, this isn't a pharmaceutical company. This is some kind of tech stock. Launches partnership to launch AI-powered cybersecurity. AI Catalyst, that was like the last theme, right? That's not really what's hot right now. So I'm kind of surprised it squeezed as much as it did, but we'll see whether or not this one can still hold up going into the open. My thought is it may not, but anyways, HOLO, MLGO, those ones moving up as well, but smaller percentage gains. And then let's not forget the overall market. S&P 500, holy smokes, we bounced 10% off the 200 from 2 weeks ago. So all of a sudden the sky was falling, and now we are within, just a stone's throw of all-time highs in the market. This is incredible. So we've got some real momentum right now. We've got a tailwind from the market. We've got a tailwind from the biotech sector. And I'm going to continue to watch to try to capitalize on the opportunity that is present in this theme right now. So if you want to join me for the next 2 weeks, check out that 2-week trial, linked in the description and pinned at the top of the comments. And I will see you back at it live streaming bright and early tomorrow morning. All right, I'll see you then. And I'll remind you as always that trading is risky. My results aren't typical. So manage your risk, take it slow, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.